topic, quite different from the last one covered, but Web3 security is really something you don't think about until you get hacked. And there's actually a lot of back-end cloning included, complexity, so we're gonna go down the rabbit hole of that. And the panel will be moderated by my dear friend Isaiah from Penn, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Katrina, and thank you for having me. So, as Katrina said, we're here to talk about a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and also arguably, of course I'm biased, I'm sure the gentleman here as well, arguably one of the most important and pressing topics in blockchain technology today. So to lay the context, and that is Web3 security. So to lay the context a little bit, in the last year, 2022, over $3 billion were hacked in a collection of over 160 separate hack attempts across Web3. That's about an 80% increase from 2021. And this problem keeps intensifying and will continue to intensify as the Web3 ecosystem grows, as adoption of the Web3 ecosystem continues. So to introduce myself quickly, my name is Isaiah Washington. I'm a researcher and investor at CoinFund. CoinFund has been on the stage a few times this conference, but to reintroduce CoinFund, we're an institutionally backed blockchain-specific venture and liquid fund that has been investing in the space since 2015. I particularly focus on security research, data availability research, and later stage investments. So I'll hand it over to some of our panelists to introduce themselves, their companies, who they work for, and what they do at said companies. Should we start with Jason?
Sure, I can start. My name is Jason Cao. I'm the COO for Certic. Really glad to be here. Thanks for the invitation from Penn Blockchain Organization. And I think, like Isaiah said, we are going to discuss the very important topic about Web3 security. And Certic is a leading Web3 security company. We are headquartered in New York, and we have a global team that very committed and focused on helping security Web3 product world. And we offer a suite of products and services, including audit, including 24/7 monitoring services, including bug bounty, KYC, and data analytics, on-chain monitoring. So our goal is we'd like to provide a tool set to help all the Web3 customers to secure their project end-to-end through their whole life cycle. And in the meantime, we also publish a lot of curated security-focused data on our website. If you go to our website, you can find we have a lot of data for different project security features. I think if you're interested, go to our website and check it out.
Hi, my name is Jesse Tasman from Redefine, leading product there. Redefine is a company that was founded out of Israel about a year and a half ago that focuses on Web3 security, primarily in the DeFi space, and it's geared towards protecting users, basically the victims of hacks and scams and all that. So we're creating tools to help the users assess and mitigate the risks associated with playing in the DeFi and Web3 space.
Great. Hi, my name is Aaron Castle. I'm with Immunify. I'm the VP of Operations there. Immunify is a leading Web3 bug bounty platform, again, focused primarily on DeFi, but not exclusively, and really bringing together the world's largest community of kind of elite white hat hackers to the table to assist our clients who are projects with their kind of the last line of defense for the bug bounty programs or for their projects.
Great. Dave Schwed, COO for Halborn. Similar to Certic, we provide cybersecurity solutions for Web3 projects.
Awesome, thank you all. So we'll start with some low-hanging fruit. There was a pretty wide narrative early on in the blockchain days that security wasn't important for blockchain. Blockchain was inherently secure. The cryptography, the immutability, the transparency. We don't need security solutions. So, question to you guys, and would love for to go around the horn. Why is that wrong, and why is security important in Web3?
So I'd like to kick that off. I think back when, the Bitcoin blockchain was the industry. The real security vulnerabilities that existed there were around the endpoints. There was never real concern that a block could get reordered or a transaction could get inserted way back. And then there was technology that was built, and really smart people created really good solutions like multi-party computation, et cetera, to solve the custody and key management issues at the endpoints. And then as soon as DeFi came along, it introduced code into the system, and the composable nature of DeFi means that there is a lot of code interacting with a lot of other code, interacting with people. And that is really outside of the scope of what the consensus mechanism of a blockchain is meant to secure. So I think that in itself is reason enough to justify the need for third-party solutions.
Yeah, I'd like to add down to that. I think without getting into the detailed technical difficulty and the challenges like what we just talked about, I think the key is like the fundamental blockchain itself. It's really built on the network effect. Basically, all the blockchain ecosystem built on network effect. So then they have more users, then they can have increased value, they have increased transaction, they can lower the transaction cost, then you have more innovations, right? So in the end, every ecosystem to be successful, they have to reach a certain critical mass of users. Same thing for the industry as a whole. Everybody is talking about, okay, one day, hope. I think everyone here is hoping that one day we're going to really have the mass adoption. We have 1 billion users all over the world using blockchain technology for payment, for decentralized ID, for all different kind of applications. Then how do we go there? I think the fundamental thing is people need to have trust and confidence in the system. Only people have trust and confidence, they will participate. You have users. Then you can achieve certain economic of scale which make your business or ecosystem make sense, right? And so when people kind of making transactions, putting their money on digital asset, they need to be sure, okay, my money is safe, my asset is safe, my sensitive information, private information is secure. Otherwise, they won't participate. So this is a fundamental drive for us. Everybody here need to kind of work diligently to help secure this ecosystem so we can one day really see the mass adoption.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, and I completely echo what these two said, but also, writing secure code is incredibly difficult, and blockchain has proven no exception to that rule. And we don't expect that to change anytime soon. So while, theoretically these are secure technologies, there's still human beings responsible for actually implementing them. So rather than pretending that vulnerabilities don't exist, we need to build redundancies for them.
Yeah, and I think the only other thing to add is I think from looking back in the early days, there wasn't necessarily incentives for threat actors to really attack the chain because there wasn't any monetary value or substantial monetary value. So as the use case grew and there was more and more members of the community and the rise of the native tokens or instruments started to raise, that's when the threat actors jumped in and started to find exploits. So I don't think that it wasn't necessary. I just think that back then there wasn't anybody trying to exploit anything.
And sorry, I just want to add on that because it's super interesting. If you kind of go back to threat actors, let's say deploying ransomware, finding a vulnerability in a centralized company's code base, there are a lot of steps in order to actually monetize exploiting that vulnerability. They got to get into the system, steal the data, encrypt it, go through ransomware negotiations. With DeFi, if you find let's say you're looking at a vault contract and you find a 0-day there that allows you to drain it. As soon as you exploit that vulnerability, you've already monetized the exploit straight away. So the incentive for threat actors to dig in and get their claws into the space is very high as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great point. I mean, these are effectively bearer assets. Once you have it, you have it. You don't have to sell it on the dark web.
Let's talk about vulnerabilities a little bit more because that's come up a little bit from a few of you. And what I think would be nice to talk about for the audience to hear, what are the most pressing and important vulnerabilities in this space with blockchain technology specifically today that you guys see that your companies help identify and mitigate? Yeah,
I can start with some numbers. last year, like you said, we actually track all the incidents through like last year, actually even before that, and we publish our annual report. According to our stats, last year we lost like 3.7 billion digital assets because of the hacks and different bad actors. And among this, one of the biggest category is the bridge hacks, 1.3 billion. And we have all this kind of well-known incidents about like Ronan and Wormhole and Harmony and Nomad Bridge. I think this is, to us, at least what we see, an ongoing crisis. I think it's probably going to be there for a while. Why it's very difficult, why it's so challenging for bridge? I think, first of all, it's, bridge is kind of still a new technology. It connects different systems together. And usually when you have like multiple components connect to a system and you don't have a standard, a lot of things can happen. For example, you don't have a standardized interface, right? You don't have a clearly defined way of doing the kind of both combine the custodian, the element, and also a lot of bridge actually involve both on-chain and off-chain elements. Once things become complex and also people are developing so fast, there are so many things. And also bridge become a very big target because in here to lock a lot of digital assets, because when you transfer your digital asset from one ecosystem to the other, you have to log your money in a bridge, get another type of token. So bridges itself become a very easy target for people. We are helping a lot of our clients to help design a secure bridge and kind of doing the best practice how to design and write their code for bridge code. Yeah.
I think fundamentally we actually have a larger issue at hand. I think, it's not, we can focus on vulnerabilities, but I think the root cause of why they're all vulnerabilities is that as a community, we're not taking security seriously. If you look at many, and I would say probably a majority, if not a super majority, of the projects that are out there, go on LinkedIn. Look at their security staff. Do they have a CISO? How many security engineers do they have? Most of the time, they don't have a CISO and there are no security engineers. They're leaving it up to their developers to secure their projects. And developers are not security people. They have completely different, focuses and completely different objectives. Developers are developing for the product. Security people obviously are supposed to, secure it by design. And a lot of the projects that I've been involved with, that I work with, they look at security as an afterthought. Well, once we get traction with our project, we'll go back afterwards and we'll retrofit and we'll figure out how to secure it. We only received $3 to $5 million worth of seed funding. I need to hire developers and I need to hire marketing and I need to go to my go-to-market strategy. And I think that's, at the end of the day, I think that's where we're seeing all these vulnerabilities because, as a cybersecurity professional, looking at most of the hacks that happened in 2022, they're all preventable. Almost all of them were preventable. Even the ones that are coming from the Lazarus Group and nation state, North Korea, that everyone's, those are unstoppable. They're not. I always like talking about the Axie Infinity hack. I'm not going to, dive into it here, but Axie Infinity hack, I can just rattle off the top of my head 20 different controls that a large financial services institution would have had in place to prevent that type of hack. So I think as a community, I think we need to take security a little bit more seriously, and I think we need to demand it as members of the community. Don't run to a project without doing your due diligence and looking into what is their security stack. Look at who is on their LinkedIn, look at their profiles, look at their backgrounds, look at their years of experience, because that will show you how seriously some of these projects are taking security, and I don't think that they're taking security as seriously as they should.
Such a great point, Dave, and it's something that I've been honing in on a little bit recently. I think Polygon's setting a great example. They're one of the first large examples of a enterprise security department, right? They have their CISO, they're building, I think they have 3 or 4 folks on the security team today, which I think is setting a great precedent. Question for you guys, do you think, coming from like a third-party auditor standpoint, do you think in-house audits will be trusted? Do you think they are a necessary build, on top of or addition to external auditing?
Yeah, I think certainly, I think project side, if you really making enough investment and put emphasis, I think people have capable skill set. I believe they can kind of achieve certain security level. But the reality is, practically speaking, most of projects do not have that resource. I mean, this is a reality, right? Why Web3 growing so fast? Because you can have 2 or 3 guys come up with idea, start some projects, launch a smart contract, right? So for them, that's not their priority in some sense. Yes, we're talking about you have to kind of have security from get-go, you have to have like security by design, all system. But then people, for them, their priority will always be, okay, I have to develop this app. I need to do marketing. I have to launch this project. And security oftentimes become an afterthought. I mean, yes, I think for like big, like I believe like the security team in Polygon is definitely very capable. Also like some of the VC like Paradigm, they have their own security firms. I definitely believe. But then we have hundreds, thousands of like projects don't have that resource, don't have that expertise, don't have that kind of access to the tools. For example, for us, we have in-house like all kinds of different priority tools. I mean, not only you need to have tools, you also need to have the expertise to use those tools. I mean, so it's not really practical for all the project to be able to kind of cover all the different aspects of the security. And also the security is very complex animal, have different aspects, right? So that's one thing. And second of all, is like on the business side, they're driven by the need for provide transparency and trust to the community. That means the community still would like project to show, okay, your project, your code base has been vetted by trusted third party. I mean, even you are very capable, just like same as like financial auditing, right? Yes, for example, we do our financial in-house, and but we still have to have auditor every year. Investors only recognize the report by auditor. They don't, although they may not change anything, right? So I think this is kind of really driven by the business need and reality.
You know, I think the other challenge is there's no standardization of what does it mean to be audited. You know, like with financial audits, you know, you have the AICPA in the US that has the governing body to say the whole point of an audit is you're providing an attestation of your opinion. Is it a qualified opinion or an unqualified opinion relating to, you know, the efficacy of the controls? And I think, you know, when it comes down to smart contract audits, there's this, you know, feeling of like, let me have the auditor come in and in effect be my outsourced security team, which is fine if that's what the engagement calls for, but then that's not really an audit. The audit is supposed to be independent and an attestation. If you happen to find things, great, you know, hopefully you shouldn't find anything. So, you know, the goal when you get to the auditor should be 0 findings, not 30 findings and the auditor's going to tell you to go fix it. Because the auditors are not part of your security team. They don't necessarily know your project as well as you do. They're not hands-on keyboard working with your developers. It's supposed to be this attestation after the fact, and I think a lot of organizations are relying on auditors to find things, and that's not the approach they should take. Just like there's internal audit and external audit within, you know, large, you know, publicly traded organizations, you know, we need the same thing in Web3. So you need to borrow a lot of what you see in enterprise from a security perspective, you know, whether it's, you know, actually having a formal SDLC process and having staging environments and testing environments and really kicking the tires and doing, you know, formal verification and just having your own, you know, quality engineering before it even hits the auditors. And we're not seeing that. We're having like, you know, pencils down, okay, let's throw it over to the auditors to take a look at it without any checks done, you know, by the project themselves.
Yeah, I think one of the things for sure is that security does need to be put at the forefront of all projects' minds, just regardless of anything else. And then in terms of auditing, I think it is, you know, in my opinion, fundamentally critical for projects to undergo audits for their protocols, source codes, to be looked at thoroughly by an independent party. However, and then as commentary to kind of having an in-house security team, getting your source code audited once before deployment and then putting that auditor's stamp on your website does not sufficiently say that what you're doing is secure. So, you know, if you're deploying a protocol, let's say one of the contracts is a proxy that points to an implementation contract or anything that has the ability to get upgraded. So I now go and upgrade my contract, and let's say I unfortunately introduce a new vulnerability into the system. Let's think of like the Nomad bridge hack. So now I've introduced a new vulnerability, but I still claim that my protocol has been audited. However, I've now changed the code that's impacted the whole security and operation of the entire protocol, but it's not feasible for me to go get an entire audit done again. It's not a scalable process. So having in-house security teams maybe might not do the job in kind of assisting auditing processes to scale, but it will help in allowing projects to be more consistently focused on security and keeping that at the forefront of their minds.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think a lot of projects, unfortunately, are using the audits as marketing. Like, hey, we were audited by, you know, Certic or audited by Halborn, you know, you should use us. But to Jesse's point, there are many times that have been audited and then they'll go and make a code change, but they'll still float around, here's the prior audit report. And again, as a community, these are things that we need to demand. We need to look at which code was audited and which code is actually in production.
And there's also, sorry, I'm like completely jumping in front of you. Also, so like not even, you're having audits there and you've upgraded your code and now the code that you've got in production is different to the audited code. That's, with good intentioned actors, that situation can happen. But now if you've got like bad actors with malicious intent, they can give perfectly good code, say, please audit it, you give it all the ticks, and then I just go and deploy something completely different on chain, but I've got a document that says I was audited and cleared. So then technically everything's fine, but I've just deployed a malicious contract that appears to have been audited. So there are a few nuances that it can get a bit tricky.
Yeah, we're just going to make one overriding comment that there's no silver bullet. Like, audit is not a silver bullet for security. Everything is complementary and needs to be done together, right? You're talking about the mentality behind the SDLC process in general, like just to the extent that audits are viewed as marketing, right? Or to get a check the box. That's unfortunate and needs to change, and it really is a mentality throughout the entire process. So shifting left as much as possible, having as many redundancies as possible, and then obviously audits are a crucial component of that.
Quick thing to add. I think really glad that Jesse brought this up, and I think if you ask Dave and me to give examples, we're probably going to go on and on for like a whole day about all the complaints we have. But in general, I think that the thing is I think having, like Jesse mentioned, I think having an in-house security team, I think really helps in terms of have a continuous process of security. This is also if they don't have, I think they need to ask help or ask us to help to have the continuous review of security. This is very important. And then also it's important is we have to keep educating the community about, okay, what does it mean? You see an audit report. You see an audit report doesn't mean anything. You need to look at the audit report. You need to look at the code version. You look at the comparison, right? So that's why actually we realize this problem, okay, give a version, then also some people actually give us a small piece of the code. And then some problem happen outside the scope. So we are actually launching new services. We call it contract verification. Basically, okay, when you audit for us, we have a methodology. You can validate, okay, the deployed code that actually matches the code that we have. And we actually we put this as a badge on our website, so you can go and check out, see if that's real. So a lot of cases we have people saying, okay, this project audited by you guys, they got hacked. It's your problem. Then we square our head around, we're looking around, then find out code, oh, it's 2 years ago, they audited by us. The code base is completely different.
Yeah, two extremely important topics in my opinion, audit tooling and continuous security consideration. You spoke a little bit about Certix, pushes into security tooling or auditing tooling, right? How do you enable developers to think about these things in a continuous manner? I want to give Dave a chance. I know Halpern is working on a number of products as well in the realm of audit tooling, enabling continuous security support. Would you like to talk a little bit about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the first thing is it's open source and it's free for the community. It's called Zion, zion.org. If you're familiar with Kali Linux, it's the best way to describe it. It's just an open source Linux distro with probably a little over 100 different blockchain security and development tools. So that's something that Halborn has done to give back to the community. And some of the other products we're working on, we are working on a threat intel platform because that is something that we're getting a lot of feedback from our clients on. There's not a lot of there's not a lot of intel feeds out there right now for on-chain telemetry when it comes to malicious activity. Obviously, there's companies like Redefine and some of their competitors that are trying to address the space. So what we're looking to do is to ingest multiple different types of feeds, do darknet monitoring, and be able to provide this holistic view from a threat perspective. As to you're engaging with this particular counterparty, you're engaging with this particular smart contract, and being able to provide that kind of data or that metrics. Now, unfortunately, this isn't binary; it's not black or white, and I think that's also some of the challenges that I think that we face as a community. Is you can give a score of medium. Well, what does that mean? Do I interact with the smart contract? Do I not interact with the smart contract? So I think that's also something we as a community need to solve, is being able to provide this objective data and then educating the community to say well, these are the security, the IOC's indications of compromise or IOA indications of attack, and then leaving it up to them to make the ultimate decision. But I think there also just needs to be just education in the market. But those are some of the things that we're working on at Hellborn.
Absolutely. And Aaron, bug bounties are a little bit different. Curious, right? Like, do you consider bug bounties competitions audit tooling? Where do you see this in the realm of enabling developers to make secure code as achievable as possible?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is, again, it's not a replacement for an audit at all. We view ourselves, a bug bounty program is distinctly different from an audit process, right? Auditing and tooling is around making individual developers successful in projects secure, whereas bug bounty is more around, okay, how do we get vulnerabilities identified at scale, leveraging the entire global community of security researchers, right? So how do we make it super accessible for our customers? Number one is we have an incredible network of those white hats that are on our platform, over 40,000 registered white hats that are looking at code that is deployed in production. This is the last line of defense, really. After it gets through everything, it's live. Now having the entire world looking at it to find vulnerabilities is super powerful. And then secondly is our customers are not experts, to your point, like they're developers, they're not necessarily, they don't have CISOs, they don't have a huge security team. They're not experts in running a bug bounty program. So making it accessible to them, where we'll basically run the entire program for you and surface vulnerabilities and triage them for you. So trying to make it as easy as possible for any vulnerabilities in your program to be disclosed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for that. Wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about stakeholders. From you guys' perspective, right? I think there are multiple security stakeholders. Who are the biggest security stakeholders? In other words, who cares most about security? Who should care most about security?
I think it's everyone, to me. It's you look at different perspective, right? Everybody is responsible for their own security in some sense. For us, of course, our biggest customer are basically the project owners, the developers who actually develop project, right? Why they need to keep their project secure, like I said, they need to have trust, they need to confidence. They need to make sure that they don't launch a project that got a hack in 3 months, then their reputation got a huge hit, right? So that's obvious. And then for us as an individual, I have multiple wallet. I need to make sure that I need to be responsible for my own security, right? That means, okay, what's the best practice to secure your wallet? What the operation you should do? What are the website you shouldn't interact? These are the things. So I think it's really everyone. So then all of us, I think, can target a customer to provide a security solution tools to help them to secure their part of security. And as a whole, like I said, the industry needs security. Otherwise, we will not go anywhere.
I really do agree with everyone being significant stakeholders in this, but I do want to double down on a point David brought up. So, if we think of security in the space, the different stakeholders, so let's look at the stakeholders that are very severely impacted when there are security issues. Let's say there's a hack. The ones that are most impacted, well, it's maybe debatable, but those that are most impacted are the ones losing funds from the hack. And really getting people to the point where they're not signing on transactions that they shouldn't be, where they're not doing, like a sports reference, they're not making unforced errors. They are educated enough to know what they should and shouldn't do at a very high level at least. So I think getting people to the point where they know that level of information and they're educated enough to, at least make good high-level decisions, that's extremely important. So if we can provide them, the tooling or secure abstractions, or just give them the resources that they need to get educated to the point where they're able to operate without making these unforced errors, I think that'll help move the industry forward a big way.
Yeah, part of our jobs as cybersecurity professionals is to provide that translation, right? I don't necessarily look at, to bring back to your question about stakeholders, I don't necessarily fault founders who are not cybersecurity professionals who are not maybe super technical because they don't necessarily understand the risk to their project. As a former CISO, if I walked into, the president of the organizations, I said, hey, we can't use them because they're FIPS 142, level 2 compliant for their HSMs. It needs to be at least a level 3 or a level 4. They're going to look at me like, well, what does that mean? But if I walk in and say, we can't use this vendor because it will potentially result in blank, which will result in reputational risk, that's how you have to talk as a cybersecurity professional when you're talking to non-technical people. So it's up to us to also educate as to why security is important, because it's not, it's not always the case that stakeholders don't care about security. That's not what they do for a living. They don't understand it. So it's our job to translate for them as to what is the potential business impact to them, reputationally, monetarily. There's going to be an impact. Regulatory, there's a lot of potential impacts, and it's our job to make that, translation.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you guys for that. And that was kind of an alley-oop for you, Jesse, as well, to talk about, kind of like the other side of security, right? Like, how do you protect users? How do you enable users to prevent, themselves from being, exploited? And what is Redefine doing in this direction?
Yeah, sure. So I think where Redefine is slightly different to maybe the other companies on stage is, so there's a lot of work that goes into building up a project or deploying a new protocol, and a lot of that work is around ensuring that the code you're building is secure and functions as expected, and that's where you'll go through the auditors and do the necessary things during the development process to help produce a secure product. After that process, it gets to the point where there's a protocol that exists in production, there are users that want to interact with that protocol, and then there are users that will have positions that exist in the space, so they're exposed to different contracts, whether they have funds sitting in a liquidity pool, or they have an active approval with a specific spender, or whatever it may be. So I think it's kind of like the prevention phase, which is what the source code auditing and bug bounties are around. And then you really get to the kind of mitigation phases, which is when you're actually interacting with the protocol. So I need to initially perform due diligence. If I'm a user, like a kind of investor, DeFi investor, I need to perform due diligence on the protocols that I want to deploy capital into. This is a very time-consuming process that's very resource-intensive. So at Redefine, we've built out an automated engine. We call it our Insights engine, which is basically a house of different policy rules to try and identify any types of flags that may relate to certain risks being present or inherent within a contract or a transaction. So if I'm doing initial due diligence on a protocol, I can run the contracts through our due diligence engine, see if any flags come on. Okay, they don't, I'm happy. Now the next point is actually transacting with the protocol. So I'm going to be in the position where I'm going to have to sign a transaction on chain. Now this is a position that's extremely dangerous. Because of the existing infrastructure and tooling, it's very difficult for even the above average user to truly understand the impact that signing a specific transaction will have. If there's been, let's say, a front-end attack and they've gotten a malicious payload injected into their browser extension wallet, or the protocol has been compromised and someone has the ability to drain the liquidity pool. I want to know before I sign on a transaction what I'm getting myself into. So we have our defirewall product that does exactly this. It simulates the transaction, runs it through our Insights engine to identify if there are any risks associated with it. And now we're at that point where I've got funds exposed on-chain, and if I've got funds sitting in a liquidity pool, I can have the best institutional grade custody guarded by a tank 7,000 feet underground. But that doesn't help because my fund's on a smart contract that's on chain. And if that contract gets exploited and the funds get drained, I lose my money. So that's also something that we're going to be looking at and making sure that we can let users know if their funds are at risk and how they should deal with those situations.
Totally. This is something that I've been thinking about recently. But what about human error? So
For sure.
in Web 2, I think, right, like arguably one of the largest attack surfaces is the user, right, is human error. It comes up when, folks do, something, they click on a link, they, expose themselves to, a hacker taking advantage. What do we do about that in Web3 security?
Yeah, so there's one thing to identify that someone is being fed a malicious transaction or they're interacting with a compromised protocol. And it's another thing to identify that what the person is doing is legitimate, but it's not what they wanted to do in their head. So, having fat fingers or, sending 100 ether of gas is something that I don't want to be doing. So the way that you can do that without having to read the person's mind is just making sure that you bring to the forefront and you show the user everything that they will need to see or anything that they could have made a human error doing. So, show them what balance chain, what's going into their wallet, what's coming out of their wallet, what contracts are they interacting with. Give them the information about what they're doing in a human readable way so that they can actually understand what's going to happen when they move forward with signing this transaction or doing whatever it is. So giving them that visibility, I think, is one way to help this.
Yeah, I think regarding the human error, if we're not talking about the project side, we have all the kind of human error in the ops, security, in the key management, you name it, all kinds of things you can find. For just the user point of view, I think besides education, besides have like a certain message, you tell them what their action means, what is effective action. I think the other thing is I think in terms of application developers, I think we need a certain consistent user experience. Basically, when we connect to the wallet, the UI interface looks familiar, people kind of don't have any confusion on what needs to be done. This is, I think, another thing can help.
Awesome. We have 5 more minutes. Want to make sure we got our due time because this stuff is important. Question for you, and this is specifically for anybody who came from some Web 2 security experience as well. I know, David, you did specifically. What things are the same? What things are different when you consider the most pressing vulnerabilities or considerations generally with security?
Yeah, I think a lot of Web 2 threats are just utterly and completely ignored in Web 3. Again, and this comes down to security theater and optics of let me just go get that audit report and show the community. But if you look at things like Badger DAO, and we look at Curve, they were all just standard Web 2 exploits. Had nothing to do with let me hack in and grab those MPCs, key shares or secret shares, whatever you want to call it. So I think whatever we're doing in Web 2 is applicable for Web 3, but you have to strengthen it a little bit, like key management. And I'm not just talking about keys, for on-chain transactions. Just also API secrets. You're interacting with an exchange. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, just hard-coding API secrets and, sitting in a GitHub repo. Or they'll have it sitting on their notepad while they're developing, but then when it goes to production, they never, go back. You have to start building, whether it's HashiCorp Vault or just you have to start building foundationally security so that way things are built correctly from design. And I understand that it takes more time to do that, and I take more developer resources, and it takes architecturally, you have to stand up different things, but you have to do these things, otherwise you're going to get hacked.
Just from a bug bounty perspective, just comparing Web 2 to Web 3 quickly is, the bounties for Web 2 are very small compared to Web 3. I mean, the impact, the scale of vulnerabilities that you'll find on Web 3 merit significantly larger bounties. So, just again, from a bug bounty perspective, it's many multiples larger than you'll see for Web 2 bounties. Like, $10 million bounties, $6 million bounties, $5 million bounties. These are orders of magnitude greater than Web 2 bounties.
Very interesting. Great. Well, I guess a good way to end this and close this out would be, and additionally, if you guys have any specific remarks, please make them. But what are all of you most excited for security in Web 3? Another way of asking the question, what's missing? And what is most important that's missing that we need to build?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start. For me, I'm most excited about, large, GSIBs, globally systemic important banks, getting into crypto because just the demand that they have for a certain level of security is just going to elevate, the ecosystem. Prior to joining Hellborn, I was the global head of digital assets technology for BNY Mellon. And I could tell you without obviously naming specific vendors, but going through our third-party governance with some of these fintechs in the Web3 space, it's a disaster when it comes to control environments. So I just think like that kind of demand and pressure from the banks and financial institutions to elevate their security game, I think it's just overall going to have a net positive impact for the community.
Yeah, I do tend to agree with Dave. I think what I'm looking forward to that will hopefully push larger institutions to get into the space is just more clarity and standards, and that's primarily around regulation, which I know has been spoken about. Stuff is moving there, but it's not at the point that it needs to be. And then standards around security specifically. Let's get some industry-wide best practice standards going and kind of build it from there, just to try and get capital back into the space and sentiment back to where it should be.
Yeah, I would just say education across the space on the importance of a very strong security posture at every step along the way from day one, as opposed to doing it after you've been hacked or after something has been exploited. So just more awareness, I would say, that rather than learning all the Web2 lessons all over again, just getting there faster.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm really excited about we have so many problems that has not been solved. I mean, that means there's a lot of vast opportunity for us. And then even we look at the audit history, like 2 years ago, probably a lot of projects didn't even care about audit. Now it's becoming default standard. But the industry is still very nascent. A lot of need for the security, I think, is still developing. That means there's a lot of problems we need to solve. And I'm really excited about that. And we like to be the one actually provide end-to-end solution for the projects.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more with everything that you guys said. I mean, putting it plainly, cybersecurity market in Web2 is about $165 billion. And I think it makes sense for the market when the full S-curve of adoption happens to be much larger than the size of the Web2 security market, given the importance of the assets that we're protecting. So I'm extremely excited, and I thank you all for being a part of my panel. This has been super fun, and yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Thank you guys so much. Really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Really appreciate it. 100%, 100%. Absolutely. Thank you for joining. Thank you, Dave. Thank you guys. This is awesome. Yeah. It's great meeting you.